Greetings, everybody. Redbeard here for the September 7th, 2016 edition of the Midweek Update. If you weren't aware, WWE will be presenting the Backlash pay-per-view this weekend. It's the first brand-specific pay-per-view since the draft. What that actually means is there's a 3-hour version of SmackDown coming this Sunday, loaded with commercials for WWE Network. Yeah. Number 5 story of the week is WWE attempting to break up the relationship that exists between Alberto Del Rio and Paige. This is a very interesting and somewhat perplexing story because it involves a corporate entity and two people who are obviously consenting adults engaged in a relationship that should be continued but don't necessarily have the blessing of their employer. The story goes that there's been some chaff, whatever you want to call it, that's been expressed by a member of WWE's front office. This is a gentleman by the name of Mark Carano, who has been seen on the Total Divas program. He's something of an office liaison that exists between the Total Divas staff and the people behind the scenes at WWE. Evidently, he's been the point man in some type of harassment that's been going on between him, Paige, and Del Rio, his part being seemingly instigated by WWE. The problem with this, of course, is the fact that you've got two people who would ordinarily be able to date, see each other whole 9 yards, but in the case of something like this, because of the fact that you have Del Rio, who is a talent that is more than likely not going to be in the fold here for too much longer, and someone like Paige, who WWE still has a lot of value in, you got some things that are going on there to where you want to sort of distance yourself from one and keep the other and do whatever it takes in order to make that happen. That's an unfortunate circumstance of this business, and it does not appear as though the fact that they were drafted to two different brands was anything other than a direct message to the both of them saying, okay, your relationship needs to end. It's very unfortunate. You have to think that this is going to have some more to do with what Del Rio ultimately decides to do than anything at this point. As I mentioned, Del Rio is not that high value of a member of WWE's roster at this point in time because of the fact that he's able to leave whenever he wants to. Paige, I think they still have some investment in because she is the anti-diva. She has a lot of history, a lot of marketability still left to her. But, just kind of waits, it's going to depend on what happens here as things move forward because Del Rio, of course, is serving a suspension, same as Paige is for a wellness violation. But Del Rio has an out clause in his contract that actually makes him eligible to leave the company right now if he wants to. It was up September 1st, that option was. Whether or not he's chosen to engage it already, we don't know. I'm sure he would have plenty of opportunities to go back to Mexico, Lucha Underground, maybe even TNA if he wanted to, and explore those options. But regardless, kind of an unfortunate story, but we'll have to see where it goes and whether or not there is actually any fruit to the whole thing of WWE trying to bust up their relationship. Number 4 story of the week is that Cody Rhodes is evidently headed to TNA and Ring of Honor. This is a pretty cool story because of the fact that it shows the kind of value someone like Cody Rhodes has in the market after having left WWE. Of course, with a name and pedigree like his, you don't have to put too much thought into the idea of him being able to go out and earn a living by being part of the independent scene. But it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out because of the fact that he's going to be working with both companies somewhat simultaneously. The Ring of Honor stuff I think is probably more interesting to most people than the TNA thing, just because of the fact that we're still waiting to see what happens with TNA. We're still waiting to see how the Corgan era begins to flesh itself out, if there are any major changes there, if the product begins to look better, whole 9 yards. Just a lot going on there in terms of it being on unstable footing right now. Ring of Honor is a different story. You've got a lot of talent that's already built in there, and a guy like Rhodes coming in will definitely add to that and give them a lot of opportunities in the future, especially now, like what we've discussed here in the past couple of weeks, with Ring of Honor having a working agreement with New Japan and CMLL. So a lot of opportunities for Cody to be involved with talent from all over the world and get a lot of exposure, even more potentially than he already had. One aspect of this whole thing that we'll have to pay attention to is how they go about marketing him, because it's been revealed that he cannot use the Rhodes name in any type of marketing. Can't use it on TV, can't use it really anywhere, which is, of course, kind of crappy because that's what he's been known by forever, but it's a property of WWE. they're not going to let him have it, especially not on the terms that he left with. This has already been something that we've been able to see in action because of the fact that when Cody appeared on the PWG Battle of Los Angeles, the material for that set of shows is already on YouTube. As far as the promotion that PWG has released for it, he doesn't appear as Cody Rhodes, he appears as Cody R. Yeah, Cody R. It is what it is, folks. But it does appear that he's got plenty of opportunities coming up. Mentioned the TNA thing in the Ring of Honor. He may also be involving his wife, Brandy, who's a beautiful young woman. She will maybe even be involved in some of the stuff that's coming to our part of the world here in the Carolinas in the next couple of weeks with the appearances he has lined up for big-time wrestling. They'll be up at Raleigh, I believe in Spartanburg, and one other location in the Carolinas that I can't remember off the top of my head, but definitely have an opportunity to check out Cody here in the near future if you're a fan in the Carolinas. Number 3 story of the week is that CM Punk will make his MMA debut this weekend at UFC 203. Long time coming for this thing here. It's been a long time coming. It seems like he's been training for this for well over 2 or 3 years now, but it's been about 2 years since the point in time that Punk left WWE till now. It's been kind of a crazy thing to watch his evolution. Fox has been doing some things in terms of trying to get his story out there, how he's changed his training routine, the things that he's been through in order to try and prepare his mind, body, and spirit to enter a new type of combat sport. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he handles it because this is something that he obviously is expressing a passion for, but will he be able to stand up to the task of facing a challenger who is much younger, seemingly much more able-bodied, and also seemingly heavily favored in terms of the betting odds that have been out there for this particular fight. He's going to be, I think we mentioned, fighting Mickey Gall, who is I think he's maybe as many as 10 years younger than Punk, but he's definitely in the area thereof. Hard to say where this is going to go because, quite frankly, I don't follow MMA that closely. Looking at the odds for this fight, as we mentioned, it does appear as though Gall is pretty heavily favored on the money lines. You never can really tell in regard to what that's going to mean in a real-world scenario because it's one thing to look at the odds. It's something else for two guys to go out there and start throwing haymakers at one another. But let's see what happens. I think it's at the very least going to be an interesting scenario to see how Punk handles being in the octagon. It's, of course, very different from being in the professional wrestling ring, but he's not going to be alone in having tried to make this transition. Of course, there are plenty of people who've gone both ways in terms of combat sports. Punk is one of the ones, however, that does not really have a background in some type of combat sport previously. You talk about guys like Kurt Angle, Dan Severn, or Brock Lesnar. They all had wrestling backgrounds, and I mean like Greco-Roman wrestling. Punk doesn't have that. Punk is a professional wrestler. He's picking up things like jiu-jitsu and whatnot as he's gone along. So we'll have to see what happens with him. Do I want him to win? Am I hoping he wins? I'm hoping it does well for him. People have been talking about, are there scenarios to where if he loses, can he still come off with a win per se? I don't know that that's really going to be possible because I think if he loses, there are enough detractors for him right now that will say, hey, you should never have done this. This was a mistake. You should have just bit your tongue and stayed in WWE until your career was over. That's the risk he's taking, though. So you have to applaud him at least for trying. But we'll have to see. Like I mentioned, the fight takes place this weekend at UFC 203. Mickey CM Punk versus Mickey Gall. Number 2 story of the week is that an NBA analyst for ESPN is a real douchebag for the things he said about Kevin Owens' son. This is a story that's gotten a lot of traction because it picked up some speed with several different media outlets, and really and truly was just one of these things that you kind of have to wonder, why in the world is this human being saying the things that they are, even at the risk of trying to come off as some type of inflammatory analyst, as a lot of these sports commentators are these days. The gentleman's name, I'm going to read it off here because I'm having trouble pronouncing it, Amin El-Hassan, who's an NBA analyst for ESPN, had some things to say about Kevin Owens' reaction, or Kevin Owens' son's reaction to him winning the Universal title. the problem, of course, is the fact that this is a child he's making fun of, and not only that, it's a child who suffers from autism. There's no defending this dude, to be honest with you. He is a Class A you-know-what. I'm trying not to say anything bad because I like to keep the show as PG as possible, but the closest word I can say is douchebag to what I'd actually like to say. To try and run down a child's reaction to something like this is just plain terrible, especially when it's the child of a person in question who has had the achievement of winning a championship like the Universal title. People will say, oh, well, it's a professional wrestling title, it doesn't actually mean anything. Bullcrap. I've always thought that people who say stuff like that really have no idea what goes into being a professional wrestler, especially not one that performs at such a high level as to be able to say they've won a championship like that. That's a tremendous accomplishment. Doesn't matter what you talk about in terms of them not being a real athlete, them not being a real performer, or whatever else. It's just plain down dirty for someone to say something about a child in this circumstance. So regardless of whatever good things this ESPN analyst I'm addressing here may have done previously in his life, at this point in time, I think he's pretty well identified himself as a trash bag loser. But if you need further example of that, this is a married person that we're talking about here. Evidently, at some point in the past, he tried to pick up on someone else who's been in the news here this week. He tried to pick up on Mia Khalifa, who of course is a adult film actress who's very well known for her association with Florida State University. He tried to pick up on her via Twitter. She, of course, shot him down, as she is very well known for doing, because of the fact that even though she's a porn star, she's also dedicated to someone in her life, so more power to her. But yeah, it's kind of crazy that someone like this gets over with any type of commentary, and really truly is surprising that he has a job, because, as I mentioned, these guys who are sportscasters these days, they get their positions because of their ability to make inflammatory comments. And that's troubling, because it's not journalism. There's no value to that whatsoever, other than to go by the old drive-by media statement that Rush Limbaugh used to call things. Yeah, that's really what it amounts to. Just some guy flapping his gums, trying to get some attention. And that's what he's done, because he's got people like me talking about him. But it's not going to happen again, because he's not worth the time. And the number one story of the week this week is something we're very happy about. Lucha Underground Season 3 premieres tonight. Of course, this also makes for a very busy Wednesday evening, because you not only have now Lucha Underground, the WWE NXT broadcast, and also the Cruiserweight Challenge, Cruiserweight Classic will be on the network there as well. So you got lots of stuff to absorb here in one night. Unfortunately, some of that stuff takes place at the same time. But that's why it's great to have replays, and also why it's great to have streaming content like NXT and Cruiserweight Classic. But yeah, Lucha Underground Season 3 tonight, El Rey Network, kicks off at 8 p.m. Really looking forward to seeing how this season pans out, because the serial nature of a show like Lucha Underground, where they've been able to progress from one season to the next and continue to develop and evolve these characters, has been tremendous from the creative standpoint of what goes on behind the scenes in this show. But you also have the tremendous in-ring aspect of it as well. And we're looking forward to seeing continued action from guys like Prince Puma, Rey Mysterio, Matanza, Mil Muertes, so many other people, the Pentagon Dark, of course, Phoenix, so many other talents that are part of the show. Just the big reason why we keep coming back is, of course, the story, but also the talent and the matches that they're able to have. This was recorded a little bit ago, so if you look online, you can see pretty much what happened the entire season. But it's being touted about that the production schedule is such that they're going to plan on recording Season 4 at some point this fall, during the point in time that Season 3 is being broadcast. So it looks like they're maintaining their momentum, keeping things going here, and that's a great thing, because the Lucha Underground product clearly has an audience, clearly has a fan following, and we're a part of that. Big fans of Lucha Underground. Looking forward to this season, looking forward to seeing where they go. Also looking forward to seeing what happens this weekend with a lot of different shows that are in our area. We have at least 9 events that we're aware of happening in and around the Carolinas. There are, of course, a lot going on in North Carolina and Georgia, and a couple here in South Carolina as well. Actually, this is kind of an absurd weekend because there are at least 3 shows happening in South Carolina this weekend, and it's somewhat unheard of, but we're going to appreciate it regardless. And that having been said, let's go ahead and roll those posters. We'll be back in a few moments to close out the show. There you have it, our rundown of the events that are coming your way this weekend. If you are a wrestler, a promoter, or in some way involved with a wrestling promotion, and you didn't see your poster in that part of the show, it's because we didn't know about it. We do our best to peruse social media to keep abreast of what's happening in this part of the world, but we do miss things. That said, if you would just send us your information via the Facebook page, email, Twitter, YouTube, any of the means that we have of communication, be glad to get your stuff out there, not only here on the midweek update, but also on the Facebook page for Rasslin with Redbeard as well. It's a big part of what we do is promoting the local talent and events that take place in this part of the world. Do appreciate you guys tuning in. We didn't talk about the Backlash pay-per-view that's coming up this weekend a whole lot. It's because we're not really that interested in it, to be honest with you. But we'll go ahead and run through a couple of things here real quick. Just in briefly talking about it, of course, the main event there is going to be Dean Ambrose attempting to keep his WWE World Championship against the challenger of AJ Styles. The match that I'm kind of interested in is Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. I think they've got to do something with Bray Wyatt now, because if they don't, I don't know how many more people he can really put over before this whole storyline angle character of his just becomes something that's really dumb. It's really teetering on the edge of that, so they need to get him some momentum going there. Of course, they will also be determining the first brand-specific tag team and women's champions for SmackDown here during the Backlash pay-per-view as well. Cheering for the Hype Bros there. That may sound weird, but they probably won't win. But cheering for them, and also really like to see Natty Neidhart get a chance at the women's title there. I think she's toiled for long enough without having been shown any real appreciation, but it'd be good to see her get involved with that as well. Yeah, so we'll have to see what happens. That's the Backlash pay-per-view, and that's this episode of the Midweek Update. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you enjoy the show, go and click that like button. If you really enjoy what we got on the channel here, go and click subscribe. That way you'll be the first to know whenever we've uploaded something new, like a match video, midweek update, or a brand new episode of the Rasslin with Redbeard main show. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you next week.